I've got another repair project for today's video. This is the television set that came with the house that my girlfriend is renting now. It was in the living room when she moved into the place. This is a Philips-Magnavox 19-inch TV VHS VCR combo, and it was made in 1999. This was made by Funai, and the TV part works just fine, but as is the case with all of these TV VCR combo machines, or at least the Funai built ones, the VCR is not working properly. I'm not going to turn this on to demonstrate what the VCR does because I want the CRT to remain as discharged as possible. This will be the largest CRT that I've ever been up close and personal with. I'm always nervous when I'm working on something containing a CRT. But this being a larger CRT, I'm especially a little bit queasy working around this, but we'll see how it goes. But this hasn't been running in a few days, so I'm not going to turn it on to demonstrate what the VCR does, but I can tell you that when you try to put a tape in it, it buzzes. It makes a motor buzzing noise. Almost certainly the belts are slipping. So I am hopeful that if I can remove this VCR mechanism, all it needs is not even the belts replaced. All it needs is for the belts to be cleaned, maybe for the mechanism to be rotated by hand a bit to loosen it up, because that also contributes to it. And then if we're lucky, that'll be all we need for this VCR to be functioning once again. If I'm not so lucky, then it might be the mechanism is jammed or out of time or something, and the motor is buzzing because the belts aren't slipping, but the mechanism is bound up and the motor happens to have enough torque to slip past the grippiness of the belt. But I think that's a less likely case. My bet is that the belts are simply slipping, and if I just give them a clean, it'll let this thing work again. But that's what it does. You try to put a tape in it, it makes a buzzing noise. Actually, it's kind of weird. I found that even without trying to put a tape in it, if you just press certain buttons, it makes it buzz. And that's really strange. Why would it buzz? Why would it try to do something when you press buttons without a tape being in it? So I have a fear that possibly there may be the mode switch may be out of alignment or dirty and need to be cleaned. And the switch that tells it whether or not there's a tape in the mechanism might also need to be cleaned. I told you the story of my 9-inch Philips TV VCR combo machine, and the VCR had issues with getting confused after ejecting a tape and thinking that it didn't eject successfully and it would make the TV shut down. And that was just the switch that tells it that there's a tape in the mechanism showing a problem. The switch was stuck in the close position, so when the tape ejected and the switch opened, the switch contacts were actually still making contact, and it thought the tape was stuck in there, and then it would just shut down. So it's possible that the switch here, that the tape insertion switch, is stuck closed, and it thinks there's a tape in it even though there's not. But we're not going to find that out just by blabbing. Let's open this thing up and see if I can remove that VCR mechanism. So I see a screw right there, and ooh, I see a nut right there, and a nut right there. So I'm going to have to get a nut driver, and there might be more, but that's all I can find for now. But let me start there and see what I get. There's the model, CCA 192AT31. The 19 shows that it's a 19-inch unit. And it was made in Mexico. I wouldn't have expected that. Very interesting. And date of manufacture, August 1999. Oh, I see 2 nuts up at the top here now, so add those to the list. Okay, once those 4 bolts and 1 screw were removed, the back just came right off. And this is what we're left with. So we can confirm this is a Funai built unit. And there's the VCR down there, and I didn't expect this. It's actually a different VCR mechanism from the one in my 9-inch Philips unit from 2001. I sort of expected that they would potentially have the same the same VCR mechanism, but it's actually slightly different. Maybe this is an older revision. Maybe they had updated the mechanism between 1999 and 2001. Who knows? But there we can see the loading motor. And the belt is good. When I spin the motor by hand, it does spin the pulley. I'm wondering if there's a mode switch issue or a tape insertion switch issue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this VCR out of here, and I'm just going to open it up, and I'm just going to go through it all the way. I'm going to clean the belts. I'm going to take the deck off of the circuit board, clean the belts, clean the heads, and once I get the deck off the PCB here, I can just I can clean the mode switch and clean the tape insertion switch, and we'll go from there. So first, let's see if I can get this board out of here. It looks like it might just slide right out, but I'm not sure yet. And I'm also a little worried. I'm worried that this might be... It doesn't appear to be a load-bearing member, but I am a little worried that once this comes out of here, this thing might be unstable and possibly fall backwards. And if it does that, it's going to almost certainly neck the CRT, which will destroy it, and also be a danger to me if glass goes flying everywhere if that were to happen. So I'll be really careful and see if I can get this out of here without that happening. There's the mains voltage going in. Or no, that's the degaussing. That goes to the degaussing coil on the CRT. Alright, it took a little bit of finagling, and I had to turn the air conditioner on because I was getting a bit hot. But I managed to get the VCR out, as you can see. All the connectors were able to remove. These little PCBs just unplug from the main PCB. And here it is. It is indeed a different mechanism than on my 9-inch unit. But I do see a lot of similarities between the two, both being Funai mechanisms, of course. So there's some things to do right off the bat. First of all, this thing is filthy. The whole TV is filthy. So I'm going to take some compressed air and my vacuum cleaner, just blow the dust and vacuum the dust coming off it, just to clean it up a little bit. Then I'm going to take this belt off and clean that with isopropyl alcohol and put it back on. The belt seems to be in good shape. I would be surprised if it wasn't, given this thing's only 20 years old. If we look, oh, not on that side, but if we go around the front and look, there you can see the idler belt driven off the capstan. So I'll also be removing this top cover so I can clean the head drum. What's the grease like? The grease is okay, but not great, and also it's really caked full of dirt, so I only want to take this thing out once, so I might as well do everything. So I'll clean the old grease off, put new grease, clean all the heads, and then take the mechanism off the board, which I've got to be really careful about because this has those not very durable connectors there, so I really want to be careful with that. And I'll do that so I can clean the capstan belt, the mode switch, and the tape insertion switch, and then we put it all back together. Now I can show you one thing right off the bat. See this little plastic arm here with the little sponge at the end? That's to clean the head drum. Whenever a tape is being inserted or ejected, when this post slides past this little lever right here, it pushes this little sponge cleaner against the head drum, just to give the head drum a little bit of a scrub. These are useless. When new, they might have performed their intended purpose. I don't know if even then, but definitely now that this thing has been dirty and has been used, and that sponge has probably impregnated with dirt and all manner of other things, This whole thing is useless now. It's causing more harm than good. So my recommendation is just take these right out. So just get rid of these. If you even just take a pair of wire cutters and cut the plastic arm right here, that's fine too. This one's actually easy to completely remove. Just give it a little pinch. And there. And it comes right out. And it's garbage. Just throw it away. There's no use. It doesn't need to be there. Its absence will not harm the VCR. In fact, it'll probably help the VCR. So, I will go through and do all the other stuff. I'll come back when I have the cover off here so we can examine the rest of the mechanism. Well, here's where I'm at. I got the two protective covers removed. Here you can see the inside of the mechanism. This is the most disgustingly dirty VCR I've ever touched. Everything was just caked in brown and black gunk. So you can see here I've used many Q-tips to clean it all up. The pinch roller was just caked in dirt, and there's actually a little bit of dirt still on it even after cleaning it, but it's still rubbery, and that's good. And I cleaned all the grease off because the grease was just also caked in dirt. I ought to, if I was going to be really thorough, I'd clean the grease off this cam gear and put new grease on that, but I can't be bothered to do that. It doesn't look as bad as the grease was down here that was just grit with dirt. So I will put new lithium grease on here once I get everything else done. Interesting design here. It's got what appears to be two idler gears, but just this one is the actual idler gear, and when it swings to this direction, somewhere under there, oh, I see it now with the phone light, it's connecting with that black gear, which connects to this white gear, which spins the take-up reel. Very interesting design. I have not seen that on a VCR. My the Funai VCR in my 9-inch combo has just a normal single idler gear that swings back and forth. So interesting design. It's also got this weird plastic rail that looks like it must be controlled by the loading motor. It looks like it possibly engages the reel brakes and maybe the idler as well. I don't know. Interesting design. Really neat. I cleaned up the loading belt. It's actually black, not brown. So much brown gunk came off that. I cleaned the head drum with the strip of paper method, and a lot of brown gunk came off that. And yeah, so that's where I'm at so far. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to remove the deck from the board so I can get to the underside. That'll allow me to clean the capstan belt, clean up old grease on the underside, and clean the mode and tape insertion switches. So how I do that, let's take a look here. So it looks like I'm going to have to remove this screw, and that screw, and that screw, and a screw back here, and this screw right here. So I'll try that and see where it gets me. Alright, I missed a screw in the middle, in the back right here, but after that, and all the other screws I mentioned, the deck came off the board. There it is. Now, there's again another difference between this mechanism and the one in my 9-inch combo unit. The one in the 9-inch set, the mode switch was actually on the PCB itself, but on this, it's actually integrated into the deck. I will flip the deck over. There's the underside, there's your idler belt, and that weird idler system. And there is the mode switch. The next question is, where this mode switch is built differently than the one on my 9-inch set, which was really easy to take apart to clean, I'm not sure if I feel comfortable taking this apart. I'll think about it, but for now, I'll clean the idler belt, which actually already looks very clean, actually. And I'll get rid of the minuscule amount of grease. on the underside here and put down new grease. And then I'll see what to do with the mode switch. But first, I'm going to bring the PCB up here. There is the tape insertion switch. When the tape is inserted, the switch is pushed in. It feels very spongy, just like it did on my 9-inch unit before I cleaned it. I bet after I spray that with some contact cleaner and work it a bit, it'll get a bit more clicky. And that could very well be the source of our issue. I'll give that a little spray. No worry about it getting on all the other electronics. And then I'll just work it a bunch with my fingers. And yes, I can feel a slightly more positive click now as opposed to just sponginess. So that could have very well been our issue on its own. These little switches must have been made with like grease inside them for lubrication, and that grease must have gone bad. And what I'll also do while I'm in here is I'll spray these buttons with the contact cleaner. These switches connect to the buttons on the front of the TV set, so I'll just give them a spray too. But I'll work that tape insertion switch a little more, and I'll clean the idler belt on the deck, and I'll make a decision on whether or not I dare try to take apart that mode switch or just spray it as it is. Well, after laying down some new grease, I did get the mode switch apart. It was pretty easy. There's just a single screw right there to take out. And after that, you just press in on some little plastic clips, and the wheel containing the little fingers comes off. And there's no need to worry about timing because it's a keyed shaft there. It's keyed to the mechanism, so you can't put it out of time by, you know, installing the mode switch wrong or something. But if you look in there, the grease is a little dirty. It's got a little blackness on there, so I'll take a Q-tip and some contact cleaner, soak the Q-tip in some contact cleaner, clean that up, clean the little fingers up, and I'm always never sure whether to lay down lithium grease or not. Lithium grease is not conductive that I know of, so I don't know. I think you need some sort of conductive grease. No, because then it could bridge. I don't know what to do. I'm just going to clean it up. Alright, I cleaned up the mode switch. Quite a lot of black came off the encoder itself and off the little fingers. Put it all back together. And all that's left to do on the underside here is, well, nothing actually. All that I need to do now is install this back on the PCB, and this is the part where I have to be really careful because I don't want to damage these flimsy, flexible ribbon connectors that slot into connectors on the PCB. What a stupid design. Not very serviceable at all. Really dumb considering how serviceable the rest of this mechanism is, but Funai used these really terrible semi-flexible connectors that you just have to blunt force push them into the connectors on the board. And if you're not careful, you can damage them. Really stinks. Well, she's all back together now. The only thing left to do is turn it on, see if it blows up, and put in a VHS tape. So, I will hit the power switch to connect it to power. Okay. Ooh. Oh, that sounded good. I'm going to turn it on. Now, when I turned it on before, yes! When I turned it on before, I didn't get this. All I got was a black screen that said V.0.15 and then 2s in the corner. Must be some sort of weird error screen. Oh, this looks good. This looks a lot better. I'm going to put in my tape, which is apparently probably Rugrats the movie. Let's see what we get. Fingers crossed. Okay, let's try that again. and now it's doing what it was doing before. Frick. Well, I pushed it in enough times and it took it. Let me hit play and see if it plays. No friggin' way. Oh, look at that. Do we have sound? We sure do. Okay, so it works once the tape is in it. There's forward search. It's got 2-speed forward search, typical of Funai VCRs. Does it rewind? No, it doesn't. Oh, and it did that. Okay, so this thing's got more problems. Well, I've been playing around with this thing, just, exercising it mechanically, injecting and ejecting the tape and rewinding, fast forwarding, all that jazz, and with some exercise, the VCR is starting to work good mechanically. All the issues it had slowly went away, and it's mechanically working pretty well now. But unfortunately, I discovered another issue. The sound quality is atrocious. The sound is incredibly muffled. It's barely listenable, in fact. So I suppose I'm going to pull this thing apart again and pull the VCR again and take a look and see what's going on. I'd like to see if, even though I'll be I'll be nervous because I'll be closer to a running CRT, I'd like to see if I can remove the VCR just enough to gain access to it, but still test it live. So keep it hooked up to everything else and just have it physically removed so I can put a tape in, see it thread the tape. My guess would be possibly maybe the tape isn't being threaded right. Maybe it's it's being misaligned from the audio head or something. It's also possible that the audio head's really dirty. I did clean it, but maybe it's got a lot of grunge built up to it still. But anyway, I'll see what I can do. I'll open this thing up again and see what's up with the VCR. Well, it's a couple of days later, and I have made great strides. In fact, I think I'm safe to say this VCR is now perfect working. As you can see, obviously, I took it out of the set again. And I've actually got it plugged in and powered on right now, as it turns out. You can power this on without any of the CRT stuff plugged into it. I figured you could, but I really wasn't sure. I was afraid I might hurt something if I did, but no, it's working just fine. So, what did I do? Well, I started by cleaning the audio head again, just in case I didn't clean it well enough, and that didn't really help. So I put a tape in it, and I observed it playing, and I noticed something very obviously wrong. So here you're looking at the audio and control heads. The control head's on the left, the audio head's on the right. And on the audio head, if you look near the bottom, you can see a little silver strip with little black squares on either side of it. That's the actual head itself. So, because of course the entire tape doesn't have audio on it, just a small strip, a small part of the width of the tape. So the audio head's actually at the bottom of this thing, because that's where the audio track is on a VHS tape. And when I observed the tape playing, I noticed that the bottom edge of the tape wasn't even covering this, the actual head. The tape was riding way too high. And that answered my question. The tape wasn't aligned with the audio head. So, I did something that I've never done before, but I was successful doing it, and I can't believe it worked. On the audio and control head, right there are 3 screws. Here, here, and here. Basically, I recorded, using another VCR of course, I recorded a high frequency tone onto a tape for several minutes, and I put that tape in this VCR, and I played that high frequency tone back to me wearing headphones plugged into the headphone jack here. And while I was listening to that high frequency tone, I took a screwdriver and I adjusted these 3 screws one at a time. I would take one screw and adjust it until the high frequency tone was the loudest. Then I'd move on to the next screw and do that one until it was the loudest. And then I did it for the last screw. I adjusted it back and forth until the high frequency tone was the loudest. That is not the proper way to adjust an audio head. You're supposed to use an oscilloscope so you can get an absolutely perfect reading. I just did it by ear, and this thing sounds great now. I put a tape in it, and it, as far as I can tell, it sounds just fine. Certainly way better than before. So that is awesome. So the audio on this VCR should be okay now. At this time, I discovered another problem, and when I found this problem, I was like, oh no, I'm never going to get this fixed. But then I realized a cause for the problem that should have been obvious, and I didn't even think of it. The problem was that when I fast forward or rewind the tape, when it got to the end of the tape, it's supposed to detect, a VCR is supposed to detect the clear leader of the tape, and know to stop the tape so it doesn't, ram the tape back to the very, very end and possibly snap it off the reel. Well, this thing was not detecting the end of the tape. It was rewinding until it just slammed the end of the tape and tugged on it really hard, and eventually just the stalling of the motor would cause it to stop, and it would cause an error condition, so it would stop, eject the tape, and then shut down. So how this works is, right here, there's an infrared LED, and the infrared LED shines to the left onto this crystal, which goes down to a photodiode right there, and it also shines in this direction onto that little prism down to this photodiode. And basically, the VCR can tell when it's at the end of either side of the tape, because when the tape is somewhere in the middle, oopsie, I accidentally made it think a tape was in because I covered the prism there transmitting the infrared light. Actually, if I point over it right here, actually I've got to turn my light off. There, right now you can actually see it in what it does in the ejected position. It just flashes briefly looking for a tape. When you insert a tape, it'll cover this transmitting prism, which blocks the light from hitting either of the photodiodes, and that's how it knows a tape has been inserted and to begin sucking the tape down into the mechanism. And yeah, when you're either rewinding or fast forwarding, when it gets to the end of the tape, the clear leader of the tape allows the infrared light to shine onto the appropriate photodiode, and that's when the VCR knows that it's reached the end of the tape and it knows to stop. The problem, as I already knew it then, was that the LED, I knew the infrared LED was working because I looked through a camera like this one to see that it was working. So I thought, oh no, one of the photodiodes must be dead, and that would be a real pain in the butt to try and replace a photodiode. But then I tried something which gave me a lot of hope. What I did was, I tricked the mechanism into beginning to insert a tape, and I covered the transmitting prism so it genuinely thinks there's a tape in it. And right now it's playing. And I think, yeah, well, obviously, I could do this before because it wasn't working, but now it's working. But anyway, I had tricked it into playing a non-existent tape, and while it was playing, I took this remote control and I pointed it at one of the photodiodes. I pointed at this photodiode because it's in the play position, and I pressed a button so it would shine infrared light onto that photodiode. And when I did that, the VCR stopped playing. This was a big relief because I knew that that photodiode was working. So, with my non-existent tape inserted, I started rewinding, and I took the remote control and pointed it at that photodiode and hit a button, and it stopped rewinding. So it was like, phew, okay, both the photodiodes are working. This is great. So I thought, okay, what is causing the photodiodes not to see the infrared light being transmitted from here? Well, I know some of you are going to say it, so I did, I did make sure. I turned out all the lights in this room so that it was dark, so ambient light wouldn't be messing anything up. And I put a real tape in and tried rewinding, and it still didn't work. It didn't detect the end of tape the clear leader. And then it occurred to me, this VCR accumulated so much dust and dirt, and one of the things I didn't clean was this prism here, and I didn't clean these prisms here. So I took a Q-tip and some alcohol, and I cleaned up all the prisms, and I cleaned up the photodiodes, and that fixed it. This thing works perfectly now, which is awesome. I'll stick a tape in here, and we'll be able to watch. You can watch the VCR work as well. As you can see, it's mechanically working awesome now. And it's playing. Hit stop, and I'll rewind. And there you can see, as soon as it hit the clear leader, that infrared light shined down to this photodiode and it knew to stop. That is excellent. By having my pretend tape inserted, whatever. By having my phantom tape inserted, I did discover that this white plastic piece is important. It's part of the, I think it's part of the mode selection. So the weird grease that was on this, I noticed some weird sticky grease, and I cleaned it off because it's like, no, why does this have grease on it? That's weird. But it turns out this whole white plastic rail slides back and forth depending on what the VCR is doing. And it slides past these little pins and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, this is important. This should be greased up. So I cleaned off all the old grease, and I put new white lithium grease everywhere. And that's making this work a bit better. And I also greased up this stuff over here and here. And since I've done that, this thing hasn't had a hiccup. It hasn't had a hiccup inserting a tape or ejecting. It is working awesome. Well, here is the final product. I've got the VCR back in, and I've tested it, and everything is working as it should. The audio is working good, the mechanical parts are working good. Notice this has the same user interface as my 9-inch.
But she had an enchantment upon her of a fearful sort. Could only be broken by love's first kiss. She was locked away in a castle, guarded by a terrible fire-breathing dragon. Many brave knights.
As you can see, working pretty good. I love it. So, I'll demonstrate fast forward and rewind here. Once in a while, that still doesn't work right. Everything, the capstan motor and the idler will spin, but there must be something going on with the idler clutch, because the clutch doesn't engage so that it spins the reels. So the motor spins, but the reels don't, and it throws an error and shuts down. Yeah, it's doing that right now. If I stop it in time, it won't shut down. I just gotta try it again. There, now it's going. Don't know what's up with that. Here's the remote control. It is very, very worn. So this TV's gotten a lot of use. And it's very dirty as well. Got the menu just like my 9-inch. This one's got closed captions, which is very nice. I have no idea what reminder means. All I can see is that when you turn it on, the little AV in comes on. But when I exit, and then when I turn it off, it does the exact same thing, but it's just huge. Although, actually, let me hit play. Okay, the AVN goes away, and if I turn reminder on and hit play, no, it still goes away. So I have no idea what's going on there. And yeah, that's about it. I mean, it's a basic TV VCR combo. It's a 2-head mono VCR, of course. The TV itself is mono. It's got a mono AV input on the front, and it's got a coaxial RF input on the back. It's I believe it's a cable tuner. It's a cable capable TV. Maybe it's not cable capable. Huh. Well, isn't that a surprise? I don't think this is a cable capable tuner. That's kind of interesting for a TV set from 1999. So there is a repair and demonstration of another Funai-built TV VCR combo. This 19-inch Philips-Magnavox from 1999. I find it really hilarious that every single one of these TV VHS combos I've ever seen in my entire life had a great working TV but a broken VCR. And now I'm currently 2 for 2 in fixing the VCRs in these sets. So it's really awesome. And of course, remember, this came out of the house my girlfriend recently moved into. And we've been planning to put this set up in the bedroom. She's already got her flat screen TV in the living room where this originally was. So we're going to move this to the bedroom, and it's going to be a fun little secondary TV for whenever we want to watch something in the bedroom. We're going to get a Roku and hook a Roku up to it through the AV input. We're going to get one of the Rokus, the older Rokus that have a composite output on them. So this should be a fun little TV. We now have a VHS VCR, and we're going to have a Roku so we can watch YouTube and Hulu and everything else on an old school CRT TV. I love it, and Bridgette thinks it'll be pretty neat as well. So there should be a nice secondary TV in our house. So that's it. Thank you very much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you learned a little bit as well. And I will see you in the next video. Or CBS News.
Called Fight Like a Mother. She is the founder of Moms Demand Action. She will explain more about what that organization is all about, her road to activism, and the underlying...
Ooh. This wasn't designed for a standard definition television. You cannot read that. Oh, I can barely read the small text.
No, but I mean still.
Yeah.
That I would bring to our microphone strong women from all political points of view. And I think we've lived up to that.
If you do YouTube, it cuts off the side menu.
Oh. I noticed when I was working on this TV that the picture is stretched too wide. It's just something in the CRT circuitry that has to be adjusted, but you can see it cutting off the sides there. That's actually, it does that, this TV does that for everything. I suppose it possibly be easy to adjust, but I don't know.
Man, people are getting stabby this week.
It's amazing. The apps themselves don't look that great, but then you put on a video like this, it looks great.
Yeah, the picture's nice. It's not bad at all.
Can I see the remote?
Yeah.
Thanks. I just want to see how the volume is.
Acupuncture and Wellness Center in North Reading to prey on a woman who had come for an appointment. Prosecutors say that when she fell asleep on the massage table...
Kitchen nightmares. Well, it's only CL episode. Oh, you get all of them here. Really? Oh my gosh. Well, I can't play any of this. If I put this on YouTube, it'll be taken down, but damn, we'll have to watch some Kitchen Nightmares.
Yeah.
I like that.
I like that show too.
So, what's your opinion of internet video on a CRT? Sorry.
It's bright.
Internet video on a CRT television. What do you think?
I'm really actually impressed I was not expecting much, and this is way better than what I would have guessed. And it's really cool to be able to have this upstairs with a TV that I didn't pay for, that my girlfriend fixed for free.
And it's just damn cool. I think it's rad.
I do too. I think it's pretty neat.
Yeah, can't go wrong with that. And
I like being able to access YouTube from a old TV like this. It's very meta.
it makes an otherwise obsolete piece of equipment useful again. So.
And I can watch stuff when I go to bed, like that chill music YouTube channel.
Oh yeah.
And stuff to help me sleep.
Fun stuff. I like it.